Good evening and welcome to tonight's Undaunted, bringing to the news on church stories. I am Oyi Opala. Let's begin. In a shocking and emotional appeal, Bishop Nkea has blown the whistle on the deplorable state of the Womb Road, labeling it a national disgrace. As Ambazonians continue to suffer on the weight of government neglect, the dire state of the road, which has left Ambazonians economically and socially isolated, has sparked outrage and urgency, prompting Bishop Nkea to ask, does the government not know that the Womb Road is bad? A very, very good question he asked there. As we investigate this developing story, we uncover the heart-wrenching details of a humanitarian crisis that has been unfolding in silence. The people of Womb struggling to access basic necessities like healthcare, food, and education have been abandoned by the very authorities sworn to protect and serve them. Bishop Nkea's impassioned plea is a clarion call to action coming from him, because demanding that the government take immediate and decisive steps to address this crisis is highly commendable at this point. Is he sincere? It's not the question for today, but will his words fall on deaf ears, or will they spark a national outcry that cannot be ignored? That will tell in the coming days. At least everyone can attest to the bad nature of the things in Ambazonia. Stay with us tonight as we delve deeper into this explosive story, exploring the root causes of the Womb Road crisis, the human cost of government neglect, and the growing demands for accountability and change. But first, let's get the prime headlines. Another mob justice, the Che Quarter residents beat alleged rapist and robber to death. Tonight on Undaunted, we'll take a look at the Ambazonian State Army on Saturday, March 2022 at Mbingo, Belo, paying a surprise visit to the Colonial Army. Tonight, Bishop Nkea speaks out on the deplorable state of the Womb Road. Also, the body of an Mbingo headsman was discovered in the bush 2 days ago after he was killed in a sudden encounter with a wild animal. All the African scene, expelled South African ambassador returns home, calls U.S. sanctions a badge of dignity. Also tonight, U.S. and Russia officials met in Saudi Arabia to discuss ceasefire for Ukraine. Now let's get the news info briefings. The long-standing war in Ambazonia took a violent turn on Saturday, the March 22nd, when the Ambazonian State Army launched a deadly assault near Mbingo in the Belo local government area of Belo County. The attack resulted in the neutralization of one colonial army and the arrest of 3 others. This is just one of the blows that the colonial army has suffered at the hands of Ambazonian State Army. A conflict rooted in colonial history. The current crisis in Ambazonia has deep historical roots. The country was once divided between French and British colonial administrations in 1961. British-controlled southern Cameroon's voted to join the newly independent Republic of Cameroon, which had gained independence from France a year earlier. However, many English-speaking Cameroonians have since voiced grievances over political and cultural marginalization by the predominantly Francophone government in Yaoundé. And so in 2016, peaceful protests by the English-speaking lawyers, teachers, and students demanding for greater recognition of their legal and educational system escalated tensions. The colonial government's violence and its crackdown on these demonstrations exacerbated the situation, leading to the emergence of an armed movement to defend Ambazonia from La Republic, the Cameroon colonial tendency. This is, of course, a humanitarian catastrophe. The war has resulted into a heavy toll on civilians. Humanitarian organizations report that more than 60,000 people lost their lives and over 1 million faces displacement from their homes. Not just that, we have reported here over and over again, and also reports from human rights groups, including Amnesty International and the United Nations, have implicated both La Republic of Cameroon government forces in extrajudicial killings, torture, kidnappings, and other abuses. The widespread violence has also led to the destruction of villages, the collapse of local economies, and a severe humanitarian crisis. All these we desire to bring to you on a regular basis to remind Ambazonians the root cause of the Ambazonian War of Independence. Meanwhile, moving on, in a heartfelt, impassioned plea, Bishop Nkea has shed light on the deplorable state of the Womb Road, lamented the immense suffering it inflicts upon the local population. The bishop's words were a scathing indictment of the government's, La Republic of Cameroon's government's neglect and failure to address this critical issue. In his words, he says, "The road to womb is so bad." Bishop Nkea's voice was filled with so much pain and frustration as he struggled to find words to describe the appalling condition of the road. His question even went, does the government not know what the Womb Road is, and do they not know that the Womb Road is bad? This also echoed the sentiments of the long-suffering people of Womb. Let's get that video of Nkea.
The road to womb is bad. My one simple question is, does the government not know? And if the government knows, who do they give the contract to maintain the womb road every year? We must hold that person to account for the fact that the womb road is not well done. We must get the road of womb to be passing. I must say this to you. Commercial vehicles don't go down to womb anymore. Only motorbikes. And to go to womb on a motorbike, you pay 20,000 one way.
I paid that.
And to come back, you pay another 20,000. 40,000 to go to womb and come back. And if you don't want to pay 20,000, look for somebody with whom you can double on the motorcycle. Where do you see this on earth? What have the Menchu people done to suffer like this? And I think that on that...
Imagine the road humans pass. Even animals wouldn't even go through that road. Well, the dire state of the road has resulted in commercial vehicles refusing to travel to Womb. And this, we know, has exacerbated the economic and social isolation of the region. Bishop Nkea's impassioned appeal serves as a deep reminder of the Ambazonian people's plight and the urgent need for the government to take decisive action to address this humanitarian crisis. So, meanwhile, Ambazonians are wondering if the Reverend Nkea is ready to join the fight against oppression, because recently he's been voicing out, or is his voicing quite political? Well, over the weekend, on this week, on Ambazonia, the barristers did justice to that topic. If you missed that, do well to go over and join that conversation. Meanwhile, moving on, the Che quarters residents take laws into their own hands. You know, of course, beat alleged rapist and robber to death amidst widespread insecurity and suffering. Well, the tragic incident which occurred on Saturday, March 22nd, highlights the desperate situation in Ambazonia, where rampant crime and violence have become the norm due to a lack of effective security and governance. The people of Che Quarter, driven by frustration and a sense of hopelessness, took matters into their own hands, resulting in the fatal beating of the alleged perpetrator. This incident is a reminder of the immense suffering and vulnerability faced by the people of Ambazonia, who are caught in the midst of a protracted war and neglect by the colonial authorities. And so the absence of functional institutions, inadequate security and rampant human rights and its abuses have created an environment in which citizens are forced to resort to vigilantism, further exacerbating the circle of violence. And so as a nation's and the global society remains largely silent, the people of Ambazonia continues to bear the brunt of these crises, their cries for help and protection falling on deaf ears. The Che Quarters incident is also serving as a poignant reminder of the urgent need for a comprehensive and inclusive solution to address the root causes of this conflict and ensure the safety, dignity, and well-being of the Ambazonian people. And so the full report of this story has it that a young man, posted to be an Ambazonian fighter, a fake one at this time, was beaten to death by a mob in behind Che Quarters, which is known as a neighborhood in Bamenda, the chief town of the Midland Zone of the Federal Republic of Ambazonia. Well, he was beaten recently after allegedly committing rape and robbery. Eyewitnesses accounts holds that the young man, whose identity remains unknown, stormed into a neighborhood residence, threatening to kill anyone who refused to open the door. After gaining entry, he stole monies and cell phones from the occupants and then proceeded to rape one of the female children. Very terrible. The population was alerted and a mob quickly formed, beating the alleged perpetrator to death. His body was later deposited at the mortuary in Bamenda. Now, this particular incident, as we would say, would highlight concerns about some individuals using the guise of Amba fighters to intimidate, harass, and extort from the local population. Many young men in Bamenda have been accused of exploiting the conflict for personal gain, and even the ASA at this point fishes out these people as well. That's not all. Still in this fight for gaining freedom and independence, a 31-year-old man who fled the war in southern Cameroon looking for safety has tragically lost his life. Ambazonian refugee killed in Yaoundé amidst desperate search for safety. This is a devastating incident, and it has claimed the life of a 31-year-old Ambazonian man who had fled the war-torn southern Cameroon in search of safety. The young refugee life was tragically cut short when a heavy-duty truck crushed him in Koteng on the outskirts of Yaoundé, the colonial capital city of La République du Cameroon. This heartbreaking incident highlights the desperate plight of Ambazonians who are forced to flee their homeland in search of greener pastures, only to face new dangers and uncertainties. The war in southern Cameroon has displaced thousands, leaving them vulnerable to exploitation, violence, and tragic accidents like this one. The Ambazonian people continue to suffer, caught between the harsh realities of war, colonial oppression, and the desperate search for safety and security. As the world continues to stay silent, the people of Ambazonia are left to face the brutal consequences of this crisis alone. This tragic incident serves as a poignant reminder of the urgent need for a comprehensive and inclusive solution to address the root causes of the war and to ensure the safety and dignity of Ambazonians, refugees, and bring an end to the suffering of the people. While we are still considering all of that, the full report says that Langi, known to many as Mr. Nice Guy, was working as a sand quarry when a truck loaded with sand tipped over while pulling out from the Sanaga River, crushing him underneath. Originally Kizanjan village in Nso, He had fled the war declared by La Republic to Cameroon thugs and moved to Yaoundé in hopes of finding a safer life for himself and, of course, his family. Instead of the security he was searching for, Lange faced a tragic accident that has left his loved ones heartbroken. He leaves behind a wife and 2 young children who now have to cope with the loss of their husband and father. Friends and family remember Lange as a kind and hardworking man who always puts his family first. Like Lange, several other Ambazonians have faced the same fate. This is a single example out of the risks many take in pursuit of a better life. That's not even all the suffering. Tonight also, the body of an Mbingo headsman was discovered in the bush 2 days ago after he was killed in a sudden encounter with a wild animal. The body of an Mbingo headsman was discovered in the bush 2 days ago after he was killed in a sudden encounter with a chimpanzee. The event unfolded in the village of Esu in Savannah Zone of the Federal Republic of Ambazonia. On Saturday, the 22nd of March, the headsman was attacked by a chimpanzee, with witnesses reporting that the incident occurred unexpectedly. The sight of the headsman's body is reported to have deeply affected the community, which is yet to understand the circumstances surrounding this incident. The victim's body was recovered on a stretcher as fellow Mbingo brothers and local residents gathered to mourn his loss. This is reportedly not the first of such incidents involving human-wildlife interactions in that area. Meanwhile, local residents are advised to be cautious and watch out for encounters with wildlife while out in the fields to make a living. These are the reports coming from the home front. Right after this break, we'll take the news coming across Africa. Expelled South African ambassador returns home, calls for U.S. sanctions, a badge of dignity. The South African ambassador, who was expelled from the United States and declared persona non grata by the Trump administration, was welcomed home on Sunday by hundreds of supporters singing songs in his praise. Crowds at Cape Town International Airport surrounded Ibrahim Rasool and his wife, Rosada, as they emerged from the arrivals terminal. A police escort helped them navigate through the building. A declaration of persona non grata is meant to humiliate you, Rasool told reporters and supporters through a megaphone. But when you return to crowds like this, with warmth like this, then I will wear my persona non grata as a badge of dignity, he said. It was not our choice to come home, but we returned with no regret. Rasool was expelled for comments he made during a webinar where he said the Make America Great Again movement was partly a response to a supremacist instinct. Well, upon returning home, Rasool stressed the importance of repairing South Africa's relationship with the U.S. after Trump accused the country of taking an anti-American stance even before the decision to expel him. Last month, Trump issued an executive order cutting all U.S. funding to South Africa, alleging its government supports the Palestinian militant group Hamas and Iran while pursuing anti-white policies at home. We don't come here to say we are anti-American, Rasool told the crowd. We are not here to call on you to throw away our interests with the United States. Sunday's remark were Rasool's first public comments since the Trump administration declared him persona non grata over a week ago, revoked his diplomatic immunity, and gave him until Friday to leave the U.S. It is highly unusual for the U.S. to expel a foreign ambassador. Rasool was declared persona non grata by the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio on the 14th of March. In a post on X, calling Rasool a race-baiting politician who hates the U.S. and Trump. Although Rubio did not specify a reason, his post linked it to the Breitbart article reporting on Rasool's webinar speech, where he discussed Trump's crackdown on diversity and equity programs and immigration. He also noted demographic shifts in the U.S., stating that the white Americans should no longer be the majority. The supremacist assault on incumbency was seen in the diplomatic policies of the USA, the MAGA movement, the Make America Great Again movement, not simply as a supremacist instinct, but as a response to very clear data that shows great demographic shifts in the USA, in which the voting electorate is projected to become 48% white. That was what Russell said. But on Sunday, he stood by his comment, describing them as an academic analysis meant to inform South African intellectuals and leaders about changes in the U.S. policies. This is not the U.S. of Obama, not the U.S. of Clinton. It is a different U.S., and therefore our language must change. This also Russell said. And he said, I stand by my analysis because we were analyzing a political phenomenon, not a personality, not a nation, and not even a government. Well, he also insisted that South Africa would resist U.S. pressure to withdraw its case at the International Court of Justice, accusing Israel of genocide in Gaza. The Trump administration has cited the case against U.S. ally Israel as one reason for its claim that South Africa is anti-American. The Breitbart article Rubio reference was written by South African-born Joel Pollack, a senior editor-at-large, Trump's ally and potential nominee for U.S. ambassador to South Africa. Well, according to South African media, some of Russell's supporters in Cape Town waved Palestinian flags and chanted, "Free Palestine." Russell further stated that South Africa's relationship with the U.S. cannot be jeopardized while they maintain their dignity as a nation. Well, let's get new news across the globe. U.S. and Russian officials met in Saudi Arabia on Monday to discuss a potential ceasefire in Ukraine, marking a significant step towards ending the three-year conflict. The talks, led by senior officials from both countries, aim to make progress towards a broad ceasefire with a focus on securing a separate Black Sea maritime ceasefire deal. The U.S. delegation, led by Andrew Peake and Michael Anton, sought to reach a maritime ceasefire in the Black Sea, ensuring the free flow of shipping. Russia's representatives Gregory Karasin and Sergei Bisidar engaged in discussions, with Karasin describing the constituents and consultations as progressing creatively. This talks follows U.S. President Donald Trump's intensifying efforts to end the conflict after speaking with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and Russian President Vladimir Putin last week. However, European powers remain skeptical about Putin's willingness to make concessions given his maximalist demands, including Ukraine dropping its NATO ambitions and withdrawing from 4 contested regions. That's not all from the foreign scene. In a significant shift in the Asian geopolitical landscape, Japan, China, and South Korea have come together in a recent meeting, marking a potential new chapter in regional cooperation. The three's gathering is not merely a symbolic gesture, but a calculated move to reshape alliances and navigate the complexities of global trade tensions. As the world grapples with rising protection and trade wars, the meeting between these 3 Asian powerhouses signals a desire to forge a new path, one that prioritizes cooperation over competition. The talks, while cautious, have yielded promises of cooperation on various fronts, including trade, technology, and regional security. Key takeaways from the meeting include a renewed commitment to free trade, cooperation on Belt and Road initiatives, and joint efforts on regional security. So this newfound cooperation has far-reaching implications not only for Asia but also for the global economy, as the region's major players, Japan, China, and South Korea, are poised to reshape their geopolitical landscape, fostering a new era of collaboration and mutual benefits. The question is, will this last? while they are benefiting from each other? Well, we'll definitely find that out as the news progresses in the coming bulletins. This is where we draw the curtains on tonight's Undaunted. Sincerest apologies that our in-house analyst barrister team this year was not part of the conversation tonight. But tomorrow, hopefully, he will definitely join us. But before we go, let's take a recap of the major stories. Tonight on Undaunted, we took a walk at the mob justice that happened at the Che Quarter residence, beating up an alleged rapist and a robber to death. Also tonight, we told you that the Ambazonia State Army on Saturday at Mbingo, Belo, paid a surprise visit to the Colonial Gov't to Cameroon Army. Bishop NKea spoke out tonight on the deplorable state of the Womb Road. An Mbingo headsman was discovered in the bush 2 days ago after he was killed in a sudden encounter with a wild animal. Tonight on the African scene, we talked about the expelled South African ambassador returning home and calling for U.S. sanction, a badge of dignity. Also tonight, U.S. and Russia met in Saudi Arabia to discuss ceasefire for Ukraine. That's all for tonight's Undaunted. Bring it to the news on Church Stories. This is where we say good night and God bless.